but invite our first speaker to join us, Brodie, who is from that facility that you've just seen there on the video, and there's so much more where that came from. But Brodie, I understand you've done a wonderful job filming that video to give us a bit of a context of where you're coming from today, and I won't give too much away about your story, but I understand you might have a film crew joining you today as well in the background of this.
Yeah, so the youth committee have taken up, actually, you're on mute there, I'm just hearing some feedback.
No, I'm not on mute, but
I'm not sure, hopefully it's
not. I'll mute myself now and I'll let you tell your story.
Oh, thank you, it's just coming back a bit. So yeah, the youth committee have accepted an invitation to participate in an episode of a documentary that's happening in a few months. And so yeah, today they're filming and also mentoring young people in the world of film, because it's one of our main Thursday media sessions is probably the most well attended thing that happens at the youth drop-in that we've set up. So it's a great opportunity for people to follow about professional crew members and get insight into what it looks like while they're also being filmed. A bit meta. Should I just go ahead and do the presentation now, Lindsay? Okay, chill. So my name's Brodie. I'm going to talk today about the Sanctuary Mallacoota Youth Group. This is something that we're really proud of as young people in our town for setting up. As you can see in these photos here, Mallacoota, it's a beautiful spot. It's really nice, beautiful beaches. There's about 1,000 people here that live here, and we're 6 hours from Melbourne, 7 hours from Sydney, and 4.5 hours from Canberra. So we're quite out of the way. In this next slide, you can see where we are up here, and it also shows that there's only one road in and out, which usually isn't that big of an issue until, of course, a catastrophic fire event happens, as it did on New Year's Eve this year. So during that time, we were out of power, there was no electricity, it was really dark and confusing. Increasingly, you know, there's going to be more and more members of this audience that have experienced a catastrophic fire event, and if so, you know what it's like. But otherwise, you know, we all saw it on the news before COVID became the big deal. So in Mallacoota, it was pretty heavy. We lost about 1,000 homes, which is about 20% of the properties in town, and a lot more were affected, of course. And here's Ashley. Ashley's our president of our committee and a total legend. I'm just talking about the history of the sanctuary. Jump off the chair. I'll bring one in. Because it's much more valuable for the chair of our committee to have a bit of a say in what's going on than me. I'm just the slightly older and more confident honorary grown-up that helps remove barriers and encourage people to take leadership into their own hands. But more about that in a moment. So during the fires, we all sought refuge. A big alarm went off in the center of town, and everybody headed to water where it was most safe. I was down at the wharf. You were at the hall. Oh, you were at the CFA shed. And why were you at the CFA shed? Volunteers, yeah. Yeah, Ashley's brother is one of the CFA volunteers, bringing the average age of the CFA volunteers down below 60. The average age of Mallacoota is 58. So it's young people are a demographic who can often be overlooked. Not because people don't care, but just because there's just outnumbered. So because there was only one road in and out of Mallacoota, the military came in and the HMS Chulls parked itself off in the ocean, and 1,500 people were evacuated. It was huge. And then those of us that stayed behind had no choice. Like we had to choose to leave then or stay until the roads opened. And likewise, people who had either evacuated before the fire event or happened to be on holidays for Christmas and New Year's weren't able to get back in town until the road opened, and that wasn't until well into February. So a huge amount of the land around us was just completely burnt. Not like normal slow burn, but hot fire. As we all know, the fire events caused smoke damage in not only Melbourne but New Zealand. And we really felt we were also really aware of the destruction that had happened to wildlife and all of the animals that we care about so much, and the decimation of their habitat. So the way that we responded during those early days was to just identify the fact that it was a problem before the fires, and then we leapt into action and created a space for young people. It was specifically for young people to get together, support each other as peers. And yeah, there wasn't any internet or electricity at that time too, so it was a place that you could just show up and know that you could talk to a friendly face and catch up on what was going on and start to process things. The SES crew were amazing. Our deputy chair, Early, is a young volunteer member, and they helped us pull out all of the stuff because the news agency that previously were in the building moved out last year, so we got rid of some of that stuff and created this space. It was very, very humble beginnings, but it was enough. We got a pool table and stuff, and got the music program on the go. This photo here in the top is there was a benefit gig put on in Melbourne, which a lot of the people that were away on holidays went to just kind of, you know, see each other and share that grief of not being able to come back to Mallacoota, even though their neighbourhoods had been damaged and their home had been damaged. And we got to project that as a way of connecting with our friends in Melbourne and events happening around us. And yeah, right from the beginning, like mentors came in to help us with art and music, and what else? Yeah, filmmaking's been a really big way of like telling our stories and elevating youth voices. As you saw in that snippet of the film before, and we might get to see a bit more of it after. It was really weird to have military, like a complete influx of military in the town. And because we'd got together as young people, we had the opportunity to invite them into a friendly match of, it was footy first, wasn't it? Soccer? No. Cricket first. And obviously, like, we won by a huge margin. And then the following week, we followed it up with a mixed soccer game. So everybody was playing with each other. But it really went a long way to kind of normalize that experience of having lots of people in uniform and lots of strangers around while we're all a bit fragile and vulnerable, and turn it into a really fun experience instead. This is Ashley down in the corner having a sing-song at the local golf club. And we put on a woodworking workshop to build habitat boxes as a way of getting together, having a chat informally while doing things with our hands, and also investing some energy in some way of helping and supporting the wildlife who'd suffered so much. And so from that bushfire response and kind of refuge perspective, we quickly turned into a really important mechanism of youth representation, empowerment and leadership in our community, where public space where young people own the space were lacking. And we've got our own radio show every week in the community. We're campaigning to get the old and slightly defunct and possibly a bit dangerous skate park redeveloped and turned into a really thriving community precinct that gives a lot of space for youth and multi-purpose, a place where you can just show up and have a chat with somebody and in the public, and in a way where lots of people get to interact with each other. And this is a quote from Ailey, who I think is she next door doing film stuff. Do you want to read it?
The Mallacoota Sanctuary is a place where I was able to put my mind to work during the aftermath of the 2019 to 2020 bushfires here in Mallacoota. In a time where I felt isolated from friends and family, and where I began to struggle with my emotions the built-up adrenaline from the trauma I had seen. The sanctuary allowed me to focus my mind on something real that would make a difference to kids' lives. Sanctuary offers leadership roles that are excellent to introduce young adults into their futures and develop confidence by dealing with problems that will help in future work, whether that be business or not. But most importantly for me, the sanctuary provides a place where I can contribute whilst also having the opportunity to relax, but make my own decisions and get away from stress in a comfortable, safe environment. After dealing with the bushfires and COVID-19, the sanctuary is just that, a sanctuary for teenagers to do their thing and get on with life. I realised just how good youth services are and how important having one in our small regional town is.
Well said. On top of all of that greatness, like Ashley's taken it. Do you want to talk a little bit about telling the stories?
Yeah, so I started a newsletter called the Mallacoota Youth Journal, which is very much supported by the sanctuary. It is technically my own thing, but with a lot of sanctuary support. And the sanctuary was what inspired it. But it's about telling young people's fire experiences and also their experiences with COVID-19 and online learning. So, yeah,
that's it, getting it out there. And through the process of doing this and having these really like informed and passionate conversations about where we sit as young people growing up in rural Australia, in a remote place, you know, what kind of challenges are we up against? And there's the obvious kinds of antagonists of bushfire and COVID and the general isolation, but then looking further into that, into what that means, you know, we live in quite a touristy town, so accommodation is scarce because there's a lot of places that are reserved for tourist season and making money for the landlords, which means that if a young person comes to Mallacoota, unless they've got a really, really good job and a good career, of which they can be quite scarce, it's really difficult to be able to afford a place of your own, even if you can find one that's available. Likewise, you know, there's a lot of opportunities to volunteer, but is it fair and is it reasonable that we continue to rely on volunteerism to keep the emergency services going when we know that due to climate change, more of these events are likely to occur as, you know, as things get less predictable in terms of the climate. So we get to have these really great conversations with each other and look at facts and learn together and then advocate. Full strike.
Yeah.
Such a great story, Brodie and Ellie. Thank you so much for sharing your experience.
This is Ashley.
Ashley, it's so good to hear your experiences. I wanted to ask you a bit of an overarching question about what do you think the biggest achievements are so far of the Mallacoota Sanctuary, and what are the future plans for the group? What are you going to do next?
Biggest achievement. I don't know. Making the space look pretty was a big job. But like one of the more meaningful things I think is offering jobs, like paid jobs to young people. Made a huge difference, especially now.
Yeah, we've gone a long way already to raise funds and address those gaps in opportunities to get paid and have a part-time job, but also be acknowledged as experts in youth perspectives being a young person. And it can be really hard to be an expert of much if you haven't been to university yet and if you've been in school your whole life, but you're an expert of the life that you lead and what you want to see in your community. And I think it's so exciting to just be in that conversation and being able to pay people